very good evening to you and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. If you are in Guyana, welcome. If you are in the Caribbean, the wider Caribbean, welcome. And I know quite a number of our viewers are in Suriname and French Guyana, and I was told that we often forget our brothers and sisters there and those in Brazil and Venezuela, surrounding countries in our South American continent. And of course, those of you further afield in the United States of America, Canada, and of course, Europe. Most of you are in France and the United Kingdom. I know we have some people in Ireland. Welcome, everyone, to Politics 101. If you were in or around Georgetown today, it was quite sunny. And I think that would have been a welcome development for people on the coast because of the incessant rains that we've been having. So it was quite good. Certainly around the Georgetown and the East Coast area, I know there was lots of sun. Tonight we are going to be talking foreign policy. I know we spend a lot of time on domestic policy, understandably so, because in any country, domestic policy always is different. But foreign policy is equally important in the affairs of a country. They often say that foreign policy is really an extension of domestic policy. And we in Guyana and the English-speaking Caribbean, we have historically played an important role in foreign policy, certainly foreign policy of the so-called third world. As I was preparing for this show today, I took time to read parts of a book written by Rashley Jackson, one of our eminent diplomats, on his experience. And I was catching up on the important role that Guyana played in regional policy vis-a-vis Caribbean integration and CARICOM and so forth. But our role in the 1970s and the 1980s in larger foreign policy, we played an important role in the United Nations in the Group of 77, which was quite pivotal in this 1970s and the 1980s in terms of driving a new perspective on international relations and foreign affairs. We, of course, were very much part of the drive for a new world economic order and a new world information order. Forbes Burnham and Michael Manley of Jamaica were leading voices in terms of those initiatives. And of course, the role that Guyana played, the leading role that Guyana and the rest of the English-speaking Caribbean played in the anti-apartheid struggle, or what we call the African liberation struggle. Certainly, if one were to cite perhaps the most important role that Guyana played since independence in international relations and foreign affairs, it would be the anti-apartheid struggle, which was a very important struggle that encapsulated not only our politics, but our economics in terms of economic boycott. If you go back, Jamaica was instituting a boycott against South African goods since in the 1950s. What is not always known, for example, is some of those little things. In 1964, shortly after the PNC-UF government came to power, Mr. Burnham asked A.U.C. Kwayana to make a trip on behalf of the new government to Africa. He visited 13 African countries, 9 states and Zambia so forth. So even before the formal contribution of our government, and that is financial contribution of our government to the African liberation struggle, we perhaps the first direct financial contribution to the African liberation struggle in the English-speaking Caribbean was that small collection taken at the Tipperary Hall in Buxton and was delivered to the African liberation fighters. I'm giving you this introduction to give you a sense that although we are a small country, although we spend a lot of time on our domestic affairs, that we have always been in the forefront of the relations of countries in the world. Our own country got caught up in the Cold War. In 1953, the British invaded their own colony, Guyana, and overthrew our first elected government under adult suffrage. After only 133 days, the British invaded Guyana, ostensibly because they didn't want Guyana to become what in those days they call communist. And they felt that some of the reforms, such as taking education away from being totally in the hands of churches, giving trade unions the right to bargain on behalf of workers, removing a ban on Black literature and so-called communist literature. For those little acts, British, on the prompting of the United States, invaded Guyana, which was still a colony of Britain. We remained part of the Cold War for a long time until the end of the Cold War in the late 1980s. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that when you are part of a colony, you're really wrapped up in global affairs, you know? I remember as a boy, well, a teenager, I was still a boy if you call it, and going to the United States and being in a sociology class and being the only student who could make a distinction between Washington, D.C. and Washington State. And I was in a class with mostly Americans, right? I give that example to say if you're from Guyana, you are part of this larger empire, British Empire, and part of the larger world because of migration and so on. And you tend to have a sense of geography and a sense of the world. In those days, that was really wide-ranging. And so we still are part of the world. This younger generation, perhaps it's now an eye-opener for you as Guyana's once again become part of a larger world. And it has to do with the fact that we have now found large deposits of oil and gas. And of course, oil is a political commodity. It's a global political commodity. And I guess we'll hear some of that from our guest tonight. And so we are squarely back in world affairs, certainly from a hemispheric standpoint, but also from a larger global standpoint. And we have to become accustomed again to focusing on foreign affairs because economic affairs is really now foreign affairs in a way that it wasn't for us in Guyana in decades gone by. So we are going to be talking a lot about that tonight. And those of you who've been following me and following my programs over the years would know that what we try to do on these programs is, to, of course, mobilize and agitate, but we pay a lot of attention to giving information that we think you need as citizens to become informed. Because the more informed the citizenry is, the more there is an appreciation of this word, and I don't like to use it, but I have to use it, an appreciation of democracy. Central to democracy is an informed citizenry. I hesitated to use the word because over the last 2 or 3 years, democracy has come to mean free and fair elections, and that kind of thing is an insult to us. In my own case, we hear the person who probably inspired me, one of 2 persons that inspired me to get into politics as a little 14, 15-year-old boy, Walter Rodney, to hear him being pigeonholed as fighting for free and fair elections. And I usually smile because the radicals of the 60s and the 70s used to say, look, elections is a one-day democracy. And they were concerned with a larger democracy. And to hear people talk about Walter Rodney as just concerned about democracy. I mean, the radicals of Rodney generation saw this preoccupation with democracy as free and fair elections or as elections as limiting. And there we're talking about a larger democracy that includes the power of working people being involved in decision making, being involved in driving discourses in their society, and in our case in Guyana, of course, a multiracial democracy. And foreign policy is an important part of the democratic framework. And the information and education of the larger citizenry are so important to democracy, because if people are uninformed, then they're not able to question decisions that are made in their name, in the name. And so we put a lot of premium on this program, on information that is geared at empowering ourselves so that we are able to make an input in policy making. We are able to question decisions that are made in our name. So welcome to Politics 101 tonight. We're going to have a big program because we have 2 big names. We don't want to discriminate against everybody. Everybody is a big name. But sometimes some names have a lot of weight at a particular time. My guests tonight are Rickford Burke, who is I refer to as a tireless activist for Guyana. Rickford, welcome. And I sometimes wonder where Rickford finds the time to put so much energy and emphasis in advocating for Guyana in the diaspora. Somebody called me today and said, I will listen to your program because Mr. Diaspora is on. Rickford, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And Amanza Desir. Thank you. And amongst to an aspect of our politics that is spiteful and bad-minded, they have been able to elevate Amanza to the place that she really should hold, because she's a young woman who has now entered politics and has made a name for herself because of her, let me use this word, she's erudite. And don't believe that's a big word, because the first time I heard that word was Buxton Line Top, where the men who used to be cane cutters and farmers, they would come and argue, and they were talking about the Vietnam War. And I first heard them say they refer to what this man Henry Kissinger, They say he's a devil, but he's erudite. First time I heard that, I had to run from a dictionary because I think I was in full standard and so on, and figure out, no, a man says erudite, which means, as we say in the village, bright, right? And it don't mean the same thing that the highfalutin thing mean. Where you see poor people tell you bright, right? They mean that you are a Renaissance person, all encompassing. And I'm glad to have Amanza back on Politics 101. And Amanza, since I big you up, I'm going to start with you. And I'm going to ask you a question that I would often ask my students whenever I teach international relations. And that is, what is the importance of foreign policy in the context of national development?
Well, I would say that, well, thank you for having me. Good night to your good self. Good night, Rickford, Mr. Diaspora.
Good night,
And good night to our viewers. I am of the view that national development occurs in the context of international relations. And so, to that extent, they are intertwined, they're irretrievably intertwined. And so, that is my very short answer to that. National development operates and happens, it is occasioned in the context of your international relations and your foreign policy.
Thank you very much for your answer. The link is between that what happens domestically has some relation with what happens internationally. Rickford, you know, we have oil, we had sugar before, we had bauxite before, but the market that drove the prices for those things weren't determined by us. So even though they belong to us, they belong to the rest of the world in a sense. And even as we engage what we want to do with the revenues that come from our oil and gas, we have to engage the rest of the world. Let me ask you your hard question that I would ask my students too. What do you think are the foreign policy priorities, should be the foreign policy priorities of any government of Guyana at this point?
Is that to me? Doc, I assume that you were asking me that question. I'm happy to
yes, that's for you, Rickford.
Well, first of all, our foreign policy priorities should be our one, I think, most important, our relationship with other nations around the world and our relationship in international organizations. As Amanda said, foreign policy is intertwined with domestic policy. I happen to think that domestic policy is informed by foreign policy. If we're talking economics, oil prices, whatever it is, trade, everything is connected to the global world. And the world is just a small village right now. It's so interconnected. At a click of a button, you can be talking to somebody in all the other continents on the face of the earth. And so our priority should be ensure that we have good relations with the rest of the world. That's number one. Number two, we have to make sure that our economic policy and our domestic policies generally are framed or conceptualized in a way that ensures that the interests of our people are catered to, as well as the national interests of the country are catered to. Not every time we have to jump along with policies of major countries who are making policies for the rest of the world based on their own strategic domestic priorities. And like in Guyana's case, in terms of this regime we have now, they have been making policy for the Guyanese people that are basically prioritized by other countries, for instance, the United States. And those policies are not necessarily in the best interest of Guyana, as we have seen since they came to power. So I would say the two most important priorities for me would be to make sure we have good relations around the world, make sure we subscribe to the policies that promote democracy and good governance, and also that we make foreign policy based on our own national strategic interest. And before I close, let me just say I just got a very disturbing text. And it really rattled me from the chief of police in Brooklyn that another Guyanese young man was just shot and killed. This is the fourth one in like 6 weeks. It's very troubling. So they've summoned me to wherever this thing is, so I wouldn't be able to stay long. I wanted to go over there. I want to go over there and meet the family.
Okay. Thanks, Rickford, and certainly that is very important work. Let me throw the same question to you, Amanda. What should be the foreign policy priority of any government of Guyana at this particular time?
Thank you, Dr. Hines. I do share the sentiments echoed, just stated by Rickford, and I wanted to say that in my own mind, it you the caveat that what we are seeing playing out now, and I'll answer the question in this way: what we are seeing playing out in Guyana right now is as a result of the fact that the government has abandoned this installed regime has abandoned long-standing foreign policy positions that we have taken, and instead they have now prostituted, for want of a better word, themselves, and they are making decisions in the name of Guyanese citizens on the basis of expediency. And so, one, I think we have to go back to the cornerstone principles that have served small nation states such as Guyana well. We have to go back to focusing on diplomacy. At the beginning of your program, you referenced Rashley Jackson. Gentlemen like himself, people of those ilk, mastered the craft of diplomacy to the extent that they catapulted Guyana onto the world stage in terms of diplomats to be admired, Ronald Austin Sr., a number of these guys, even our own Caribbean we have still in operation now. Several of them, Ambassador Collins, these were people that understood that because of our geographical size, one, because of our population size, that the art of diplomacy had to be perfected because we do not have military might to defend our borders. And so we rely heavily on diplomacy. And so I believe that we have to start rededicating our energies to boosting the cadre of diplomats that we have. They are our first line of foreign policy defense. This prostituting of ourselves on the international stage has to stop. We are in this position where we are even now asking what are our foreign policy objectives because of the present regime that we have. And so you do not have a fixed core of ideas, ideals, and principles that guide us. So that is another thing that we as Guyanese now in this present context have to define and redefine because you have to cater for dynamism, you have to cater for growth. So that's the second point. So we have to reinvigorate our diplomatic core. We have to decide on what our core principles and positions will be on particular matters, catering for dynamism because you have to be responsive. And the other point that Rickford made is that we have to mind our relationships with international organizations. The other issue is that we have to continue to educate our people about the importance of foreign affairs and foreign relations. Very often, when people hear about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it does not crystallize in their minds exactly how important that ministry is. It is absolutely, absolutely important. This is the face of Guyana to the rest of the world. And therefore, we have to make sure that the people are capable of representing Guyana. One, we have to internally ensure that those people are speaking and saying what the Guyanese people want them to speak and to say. And so these are all of the things that we must now necessarily look at, because we are now today in a position where our foreign policy gains have been so rolled back that we are in jeopardy of becoming the laughing stock of not only CARICOM, and I'm sure we will talk about it today, that we in Guyana, Guyanese, Guyana has dealt such a blow to regional integration with the stroke of the installed president's pen today, by what we have done to the
Yes.
Haitian brothers and sisters. These are fundamental. These are fundamental issues that we have to look at as a people, because they have ramifications. And so elections have consequences. And so the PPP regime occupies the seat of government through elections that are still unresolved, but they are making decisions that will negatively impact every Guyanese.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And since you've introduced of the Haitians, I am going to go there immediately, because when I heard that report, when I heard the Attorney General hinted at it yesterday or whenever, I said it couldn't be serious. And when I read the report today, that the president of this country, has actually taken Haitians off of that regime of that CARICOM side on to, that they come here hassle free and they get an automatic 6 months visa. I was enraged, I was surprised, and I was ashamed. David Rudder, in one of his more famous songs, Haiti, said, Haiti, we are sorry. We misunderstood you. One day we'll turn our heads and look inside you. Guyana today has turned its head and has done to Haiti only second to what the French did to Haiti. And as Guyanese, all of us should be right up and enraged. And I am the host, Rickford, you are the guest. What do you make of what they did on Haiti today?
Well, it's a racist policy. I mean, there's no question about it. The the government is afraid of Black people coming to Guyana, Black people from the Caribbean, Black people from Africa, because they're scared that those people will assimilate with the Afro-Guyanese community and potentially become residents and vote against them. They're only interested in people with straight hair coming to Guyana. It's as simple as that. This is an apartheid government. It is the most violently racist and brutally oppressive anti-Black regime in the hemisphere. And I discussed this matter with our Congress members, several of them today. And I'm assured that the Congress will take some sort of action. Listen, I am not even sure if our courts will allow this. Haiti is an undeniable member of CARICOM. Undeniable. Haiti is a part of CARICOM. It's a full member of CARICOM. It is, to me, repugnant to the rules of law, to the values of CARICOM. And of course, it's an egregious breach of the CARICOM Treaty for this racist East Indian-led government of Guyana to project its racism into CARICOM and to make decisions based on race and try to shut out Black people from the region, from Guyana. That's exactly what they're doing. And we must say exactly what it is. I see some people dancing around it. No, it's racism. This is an apartheid regime. They don't want Black people to come to Guyana. They are not even sure if they want Black people from Guyana living in Guyana. They are taking steps to entrench themselves, to establish ethnic supremacy in the country, to make Black people second-class citizens. That's what this is about. They want to take everything from the country. They want to occupy all of the economic, political, and social space in the country. They're a bunch of dirty racists, and we cannot allow them to do this to the country. They have taken a big stick and fractured CARICOM integration. And you know what? They don't care. And why they don't care? Because the other CARICOM leaders are condoning them. They're scared to say anything for fear of being berated. Just like what happened to the CARICOM chairman, Dr. Keith Rowley. I'm not even too upset that they attacked Dr. Rowley because Dr. Rowley is one of the people who stood up for them during the recount. So he's getting a taste of their racism. But I hope that this decision will be challenged in court. I hope that this decision will be challenged in court right away.
Yes, as usual, Rickford Barker,
if not, the CARICOM country should take action against Guyana. We cannot, I'm Guyanese and I don't want that to happen, but if this matter is allowed to proceed the way these PPP racists want, then all the other CARICOM countries should ban Guyanese from coming there, establish visa requirements, take away their hazard-free privilege. It's simple as that.
Yes, Amanda, please come in. Your take on what this banning Haitians mean?
Well, look, it is illegal, in my opinion. It goes against the provisions of the revised treaty, and so I am in full agreement that it is something that should be challenged. It is not up for debate. Haiti is a full member of CARICOM. They're not an associate member or any such thing, and so it is either we are going to pursue regional integration or we are not, and it is understandable why Rickford would come to the conclusion that he has come to. Nobody can fault him for that conclusion. Because look, taking the step that the installed regime has taken is usually a few things usually come before that. A few steps are usually taken before that. I have seen no evidence in the public space that our government has, either through CARICOM, which has an ambassador from Haiti appointed to CARICOM. I have not seen in the public space any communication indicating that there are concerns from the government of Guyana. And this is what I talked about when I spoke about earlier, Dr. Hines, about the art of diplomacy. Something like this is the last resort. Where is the evidence that this concern was raised with the Haitian authorities? Where is the evidence that this concern about human trafficking as it relates to Haitians was raised with the CARICOM? None has been proffered, because I would say with some degree of certainty that there is none. And so what has happened is that the government has taken a draconian step because it is not in their interest to curb human trafficking. Let us recall that it was under this current regime, when they were back in power pre-2015, when they were in power pre-2015, that had the most deplorable rating for human trafficking in the world, one of the lowest rankings. And so this pretext that they have used of human trafficking, it is nonsensical, because the question necessarily arises, Dr. Hines, is it only the Haitians that are susceptible to this trafficking? We have said that we are opening up our country to Venezuelans. Are they not as susceptible to trafficking as these Haitians? And because they do not want to be called out on the fact that they are racist, and all this is exactly what we are seeing it to be. They do not want Haitians to come to Guyana to settle to work. Let me say this: these people, these our Haitian brothers and sisters who come here, a lot of them have taken up jobs that Guyanese do not wish to take up. They come here, they work hard. Those of them who choose to stay. This is the immigrant story. This is the story of many of them who are in Queens and in Brooklyn that left during those dark years for betterment. And so a lot of them are sitting in the comfort of their basements in Queens and all of these other places to dictate and to speak and to spew bilge when we are talking about the lives of people. Guyana is to the Haitians that proverbial city on a hill. And we have a moral obligation. We have a moral obligation to do better, Dr. Hines. We cannot use this justification that, oh, other CARICOM member states have put restrictions. Foreign policy, international relations is far more nuanced than that. Guyana is 83,000 square miles. Guyana has a population internally of less than 1 million persons. The truth is that for Guyana to develop in the manner that it should economically, we need workforce. We do not have the workforce. We do not have the capacity locally. And we are closing the doors on our CARICOM brothers and sisters. I'm not saying that they must come and rush to be citizens, etc. There are mechanisms through which people can come, live, and work and be contributing members of society. And the fact is that the PPP, they are unwilling to explore those possibilities because they have no interest in so doing. Their only interest is in keeping out our Haitian brothers and sisters, right? And so I believe that this is a case that should be tested to the limit of the CCJ, because Haiti is a CARICOM member state. Haiti has a rich history of lighting that revolutionary flame in this part of the hemisphere. It was Haiti that dared to dream that they could be independent even before so many of the other nations. And I believe we have a duty to do better. We have a duty to do better, Doc. We have to do better. We are
We have to
better
do
than
better.
this. We are better than this.
And it is why sometimes we have to understand why some of us get so emotional about this. Let me tell the younger members of the audience that there was a West Indies Federation between 1958 and 1960. And Guyana was kept out of that federation by a PPP government on the grounds. If Guyana got into the federation, Indians would be a minority. And the young people in the audience to understand that East Indians and Africans and Amerindians, to understand this attitude of this government has roots that go way back to the 1950s, kept Guyana out of an experiment of Caribbean nationalism because they felt Indians would become a minority. Second, if you are fighting human trafficking. And the man said, you're right. What you forgot to mention is that the coalition government came in and cleaned up that bad record that they left on trafficking. It's one of the shining examples of that government. They cleaned up. If you want to fight human trafficking, why pick on Asians? Why pick on Asians? Human trafficking is a problem, but it is not confined to Asians. You have to have an overall policy that balances the fight against human trafficking, upholding the human right of people of the world to move, to migrate. Immigration is integral to the world development. It boggles the mind that a government in Guyana is so insensitive. I mean, when you sit down and you say, we want to fight human trafficking, and we want to do something about these Asians, you're not studying that half of Guyana are people that look like Asians and that will become enraged at what you do to their brothers and sisters. There is something about this government that those of us who are old enough know that is so insensitive, and that it's coming out now in the open. There is no disguising of it. And I make no apologies if I'm riding up people this evening, because I think that people should be riled up on this issue. Not sugarcoating. You all need to get angry, because this is ethnic cleansing. You don't only cleanse people inside of your nation, you're cleansing Guyana ethnically by preventing Black people from coming into Guyana. This is ethnic cleansing. Guyana's taking ethnic cleansing now another level. You all need to get right up about it. You know, let's
Dr.
move on.
Hines, Dr.
Recording
Hines,
on our
I
lips.
want to.
Was this supposed phone call by the undersecretary? Yes. Go ahead, Amanzo.
Dr. Hines, I wanted to end this on a point that
Yes, go ahead.
it has to be made very clear, particularly to our younger population who might not have the historical context, that you may think that this will not affect you. But understand that when your government makes moves like this, it has opened itself up to other countries doing likewise. And so we may very well find that when and if states decide to reciprocate, we may very well find ourselves 20 years backwards where our freedom of movement and this movement within the CARICOM space, etc., is adversely affected. And so for those who may want to justify this unjustifiable act, understand that it will affect you. It can affect you. So it is not far removed. It is not only the Haitians, because our regime, the government has opened the door to restrictions being imposed on Guyanese because of their wanton disregard for treaty obligations. Dr. Hines, the point must be made that there is a process and there are rules when you are going to if you have to enter reservations, etc., to treaty provisions. You cannot simply renege on treaty obligations in this manner. It is dangerous. It is dangerous.
Obligations. Yes. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Rickford. Your mic is not on, Rickford.
Really deal with this discussion. Um, First of all, it is not only the Haitians. The government denied 19 Nigerians entry into Guyana. So it's a clear policy of denying Black people. It's now undeniable. They can't deny it. They want to deny large amounts of Black. They want to ban large amounts of Black people from coming to Guyana. Second, I want to disabuse everybody about the government's argument about human trafficking. The Haitians are not trafficked. How can I be trafficked if I jump on a plane, buy a ticket, and enter a country lawfully? That's not trafficking. That's traveling. That's migrating. That's people seeking job opportunity or moving on to a different destination. There's no law that says somebody can't come to Guyana and go to Brazil or Venezuela. What the government of Guyana is concerned with, if the Haitians want to lawfully come to Guyana and lawfully move on to Brazil. But they're calling it human trafficking because that's what they want to do. Any person who's Black that they want to move against, they couch whatever they're going to do in a criminal term, right? So Amanza did something wrong to them, so she's a criminal. Dr. Hines is a criminal. Trevor Ben is a criminal. Vala Lawrence is a criminal. And the most criminal minds are in the PPP. The PPP is a criminal organization. It's an organized crime organization. So, but I wanted to make sure I tell everybody, the Haitians aren't indulging in human trafficking. They are traveling. They are making use of the CSME provisions, which says they say that they can travel to any country and seek employment, or they can travel without hassle. Simple. That's what CARICOM says. But I want to dig deeper into the fact that they have denied Nigerians. So now they're banning Africans from coming to Guyana. I want to know when just like Amanza says, when other CARICOM countries start to ban PPP supporters from going to their country, or the larger Guyanese population from going to their country, what will happen? We complained about Trinidad and Barbados and Antigua. Back in the days, they used to hassle Guyanese when we traveled there. Why? Because Guyanese were searching for a better life. We all are, those of us who make up the Guyanese diaspora abroad, wherever, whether it's London, the Caribbean, the United States, we came for a better life. Guyana is perceived to be taken off on an economic boom. We have an oil industry. We need people in all the different service industries, right? If we're going to develop the country, as Amanza says, we have to have people. Plus, Guyana is vastly underpopulated. We are 83,000 square miles with less than 25% of the country populated. So why are they denying Black people the opportunity from coming to Guyana to seek a better life? That's exactly what they did to the Vincentians when they denied or refused to help evacuees from St. Vincent who were suffering from the effects of the terrible volcano that erupted there. So I think I like you when you said we must be riled up. My problem is Guyanese are not riled up. I'm not sure if they're intimidated. I'm not sure if they're taking counsel from somebody. I'm not sure what's going on. But Guyanese, their sons will be killed by a PPP death squad, and they're not riled up. And I'm really wondering what is going on with the psyche of the Guyanese people, because we were allowing this nonsense to happen. I'm sorry that I had to go on like that, but I really wanted to make that point. No trafficking. It's not trafficking. And they're denying Africans as well as Haitians the right to come to Guyana.
Thank you, Rickford. You know, we came here tonight, when I conceived of this program, was really to discuss foreign policy within its larger context. And here now, you have this Asian issue, which is a foreign policy issue. And then they tell us you all like to talk about race. You know, anyhow.
That we don't care.
You all get vexed.
Black people are under
You all
threat,
get
and we have to
vexed.
talk about it.
You all get vexed. Rickford, let's talk about this phone call between the Undersecretary in the State Department that has responsibility for the hemisphere to our foreign minister. What are your sources telling you what actually occurred in that phone call? Because we had a report that says there was some dressing down on the same issue of racism. And then shortly after that, because the embassy coming out with a band-aid. That's what who got talk to these people. What your sources are telling you.
Well, my understanding is that there was a telephone conference between Ambassador Victoria Nuland, who is the U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, meaning that she's the third in line in the State Department. She's the third highest ranking Biden official in the State Department. And that while she did communicate some of the issues that the United States government is pleased about, she also candidly informed the foreign minister that there's several political developments that are happening in Guyana that the United States is concerned about. Once that report came out, and I have been in touch with several members of Congress, not only the ones from Brooklyn, as late as today, who are engaging the State Department, and you will see some pretty strong action coming from Congress with regard to racism in Guyana. I'm assured of that, and I can comfortably report that. Second, I noticed just after that report came out, the government, my understanding, asked the U.S. Embassy ambassador for an assist because that news report really resonated. And so, Ambassador Sarah PPP Lynch willingly tried to diminish the reports coming out of Washington and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Guyana by saying, well, the ambassador spoke about, congratulated the government of Guyana on some issues that the United States government is pleased about. That's all well and good. But the ambassador should acknowledge what Ambassador Nuland said. I'm at a loss to understand why Sarah Lynch has to always try to defend the PPP regime. But she's not defending democracy under the PPP regime. She's not speaking out against the racism practiced by the PPP regime, which goes counter to the values of the Biden administration. And one has to remember that Ambassador Lynch is a holdover from the racist Trump administration. And to me, she has countenanced the racist policies of this Trump administration. If she does not, she must speak out. She must tell us whether she's in agreement with all the Black people from public service being fired. She must tell us whether or not she's in agreement with all of these Black people from GCOM being charged criminally. She must tell us whether she's in agreement with them charging an attorney, a Black attorney, who performed legal functions, represented his client in commercial transactions. She must tell us whether or not she's in agreement with this racist government taking away the lands and properties of Black people. Required. She was very, very public and very expressive during the recount. She was acting like she was the owner of a cotton picking plantation, which is Guyana. But now she's absolutely silent, and her silence is giving the impression that she countenances the racism. I wouldn't be surprised if she does. She's from the Trump administration. And that's why I wrote the letter to the State Department. Obviously, the PPP seem to be rattled by it. We will have action. I've been in touch with the State Department. I've not only been in touch with the State Department, I'm in touch with the White House. And my organization filed a complaint with the Secretary of State and with the Inspector General of the United States State Department against the ambassador. And I'm pretty sure that there will be some form of inquiry, and the ambassador will have to defend their actions.
Amanda, you are the shadow foreign affairs person. What that means that you you have oversight over foreign affairs. And if the government changes tomorrow, you're likely to be our foreign minister. Just put it in a plug there for you. Um, uh, uh,
Yes.
Seriously, what are you hearing? Because you must have been working the phones and all of that stuff. I'm not asking you to give me any secrets. What have you been hearing?
Well, I have been hearing that after the call, Hugh Todd wasn't very happy. And so you see a very innocuous statement, an information note posted on the his website. Now, any of us who have been around diplomacy and diplomatic circles for a long time, we understand that when a call doesn't go as well as you would have hoped, that is the statement you put out. We discuss very broad things, democracy and so on. And so you say a lot without saying anything of substance. And so that does substantiate, I believe, what Rickford has heard, that it didn't go as well as they had hoped. I know the assist from the U.S. Embassy, but I think what is happening is that there continues to be an assault on the intelligence of Guyanese people. The PPP continues to operate as if we are unable to reason, as if we are unable to think for ourselves. And that is not the case. I think coming back to the point of us, you made earlier, of us becoming agitated, I think a lot of Guyanese are in the headspace as if they are observing a scene unfolding before them and feeling powerless to do anything about it. And we have to keep reiterating to them that you, more than anybody else, you have the power to stand up and make your voices heard. They may be able to victimize 1, 2, 3, 31 of us, but it's every right thinking Guyanese should stand up against these atrocities. They have no chance of continuing. And so, coming back to the issue, I believe that it was communicated that that they are not very happy with some of the developments. The Biden administration has indicated that they, through all of their actions and policies, that they will be going towards a more traditional diplomatic approach, where treaties, processes, etc., will be respected. And so it is to be expected that we will see some more harsh criticisms. I mean, I'm interested in seeing what the US Embassy says about this Haiti issue, particularly given the fact that you gentlemen could bear me out on this, that the US has taken steps recently to address certain issues with US immigration and Haiti.
Yes.
They would have taken certain positive steps recently. And so, certainly, when we understand that, of course, US foreign policy is one where they extend the borders, the limits of the borders as far as they can. I mean, for those of us who understand foreign policy, we understand it. That is, if you make surrounding nation states prosperous, etc., you reduce the amount of people running to America and so on to find a better life. And so the fact that Haitians have viewed Guyana as a viable alternative to the United States in terms of making a life, being able to create a livelihood, being able to legitimately come here and to work, going to be a problem. I foresee that it is going to be a problem.
Yes. Rickford, again, I'm drawing on your, as you being the man, I want you to expand on what Amanza's introduced. Are we seeing a shift, and I'm using that word advisedly, a shift in the US policy towards towards Guyana?
We are going, those of us in the
Your
diaspora,
mic, your mic.
my mic is up. I think the technical person has, okay, he's unmuted now. There's a shift, and there's going to be a larger shift, because we will force the government to treat with the racist apartheid regime in Guyana like apartheid regimes and racist regimes should be treated. We will also, in conjunction with Black Lives Matter, launch a campaign to create awareness among U.S. businesses in U.S. companies doing business in Guyana that this is a racist government and what their racist practices are. We have been constantly meeting with our members of Congress, like I said, up to yesterday and today. I briefed some of them, and we'll be pressuring them as well to pressure the administration to deal with this government like a racist government, just like Myanmar or Burma. I am aghast as to why the ambassador in Guyana is not demonstrating the values of the Biden administration. And we have been assured that there will be a new ambassador in Guyana soon. When ambassadors are being appointed, the U.S. government has not gotten to the point of appointing ambassadors yet. As you know, the Trump administration completely disrupted the transition. So there are still hundreds of, last I checked, 115 Biden administration officials just at the deputy secretaries, undersecretaries, and assistant secretaries, and deputy assistant secretaries level are still in Congress. Background checks are being done, hearings are being done, markups in committee still to be done, votes still to be done. So I think probably till later down this year and early next year, they're going to get to ambassador appointments. But we will engineer a shift in the policy, the U.S. policy towards Guyana. Listen, Guyana is my home, as you can see from my passion, that I love my country, I love my people, I love all of my people. But we cannot allow an ethnocracy to flourish in Guyana. And that's what the PP regime is doing. I know President Biden. I worked on the campaign when he was vice president, the vice presidential candidate for the Obama administration. I know the vice president. I know the Secretary of State. I know several people in this administration, and I'll be meeting with everybody. I'm pretty sure that I'll be meeting with President Biden at some point in time and pointedly discuss Guyana. And I'm pretty sure as well that our representatives in Congress will do the same. This is a democratic administration. We worked very hard to get this government appointed. And to the extent that the Biden administration believes in democracy, believes that racism is an evil that should be eradicated from the world, it has to address the issue of anti-Black racism by the East Indian-led PPP government. And I'm not afraid to say, I notice they're coming after me. The Attorney General just cursed me out, called me all sorts of names. I'll deal with him. He said he's coming to New York to meet me. I'm waiting in New York to give him a really royal welcome. This administration has to be embarrassed everywhere they go. And we will begin to do that. That's why we're planning a massive march and rally on August 15th. I hope both of you can come. A lot of people have indicated that they'll come. Somebody called me from Canada saying that they're planning to come with a bus. Somebody from Arizona is planning to come. Today, my cousins in North Carolina told me they're planning to come. We hope to pull a massive crowd to demonstrate to this government that we're serious. The rally is going to be held right under the home of Chuck Schumer. Okay, he lives right there. And we're going to invite him to the rally. Our elected officials are going to be there. Then there's a diaspora conference that will focus on transnational crimes. We hope that someone from the Justice Department will be there, and the New York Attorney General. We're going to invite her to be there. We're going to zero in on what the PPP is doing in Guyana. This is not going to be like the PPP regime was allowed to operate and obliterate Black people and other persons who don't support them in the previous regime from 1992 to 2015. We're going to go after them, and we're going to go after them tough and hard. If they think that they can fight us in the diaspora from there, we're going to demonstrate to them that we're Americans. We live in this country where we have freedom of, we have constitutional and inalienable rights that we will exercise, and they can't do anything about it.
Thank you very much, Rickford. And you know, when things are sinking in, somebody called me and sent a flyer that they're circulating, and I think all three of us have made an appearance on that flyer. Of course, calling us anti-racist and so on. You know, well, when Dr. it's biting.
I have to go, but let me respond to that. I am proud to be an African Guyanese and an African American. I am proud. In this country, we fight for the rights of Black people. In Guyana, the PPP think that fighting for your rights is racist. What it is that they think that because we're calling them out on their racism, they can just throw back the term of us, that term at us. But I don't care. If they want to call me a racist, call me a racist. I'm going to fight them like hell. And I'm going to inspire the rest of Guyana to fight their racism. And we'll see who wins, because I don't think the international community in 2001 will tolerate PPP racism, especially when they're attacking Black heads of state, especially when they're attacking the oldest independent nation in the hemisphere, the oldest Black independent nation in the hemisphere, Haiti. We have to stand up and fight PPP racism. It is all well and good if you win an election fairly and you're given a mandate to govern. But this government didn't win a free and fair election. As a matter of fact, the elections is still in dispute in the courts. They supposedly won this election by 15,000 votes, and upon their installation in government, launched a vicious war on the Black population, half the country. And it's time we fight back. And also, they're establishing their death squads in preparation for probably protests, peaceful protests. We'll see how that goes. Because I think if they do that, we should form a militia to protect Black people.
Thank you very much, Rickford Burke. As usual, quite plain spoken. He doesn't hold back. And Rickford, thanks. I'm going to have you back to talk about that march and the other kind of work. Those of you in the audience who are in Brooklyn area, please get in touch with Rickford and to join what he's doing. In the time we have left, we're going to touch on a couple of issues. Is there anything else you would like to say on this issue about the call with Hugh Todd?
No, I just believe that based on all of the anecdotal evidence, that there has been some communication of dissatisfaction with developments. And Doc, let me hasten to say that I'm sitting listening to Rickford, and he talks about defending the rights of in the U.S., defending the rights of African Americans, etc. It is so interesting that we miss the point that when he says that a lot of the people who sit and hurl racist remarks, who might be of a particular ethnicity, whether it's Indo-Guyanese or not, they benefit from those agitations. Because I keep making the point that in the wider world, in this globalized context that we are living in, we are all considered to be people of color. I think it is important that that point be made. I think also it is important that we understand and appreciate that in multi-ethnic, multicultural, particularly multi-ethnic societies that are very polarized, such as ours, generally you find governments interested in shared governance in terms of a concept, not necessarily a model. Shared governance, where we all have a stake in the development, or on domination. Ethnic
Yes.
societies, polarized ethnic
Mm.
societies, either go down one of two paths. And I think this PPP installed regime has indicated that they are going down the road of domination. And we
Yes, and
have
you.
to stand against it. This setting up of this regional task force is simply a front for them to have the ability in every region of Guyana to suppress dissent, to suppress dissenting voices. And people must understand that dissent is a cornerstone of democracy. And for those who still in their heads believe that the PPPC is about democracy, I am afraid that unless we check this very early, we will come upon some very painful discoveries here. The first being that they don't care about Guyana and Guyanese. They're about enriching themselves. They're about enriching a group of about 20 to 30 families at the expense of every Guyanese, including their supporters. And you will recall, Dr. Hines, when they came for me saying that I was racist because I made a certain statement that they took and twisted. And they thought that by labeling me a racist, I would shut up. I think they have realized, and it don't go so. It don't work so. Guyana belongs to every Guyanese. It belongs to the son of the slave. It belongs to the daughter of the indentured servant. And no one has a greater right above the other. And so anybody with any modicum of intelligence understands that when you start to talk about race, the fastest way they want to shut you down is to call you a racist. But it doesn't work like that anymore. We are a far more enlightened people. And I keep saying to the supporters of the PPP, if you keep encouraging them, one of these days there will be nothing left to consume, and they will then consume you, because that is the nature of the beast. And so you are better off speaking up now, demanding accountability now, because believe me, those who afford to leave will hop on a plane and go. And it is the poor, the working class, that will have to stay here to face the wrath. And if you don't believe me, that I want to switch, but this is something that always jumps to my mind when I talk about this. When we talk about sugar, we remember many years ago when Bar Jack Dio said that Skelton must be built, etc., etc. And he drove the fear of God into people that if Skelton isn't built and it doesn't work, sugar will die. He knew that sugar was dead. He knew that sugar was dead. Built a factory that we're still paying for from taxpayer money up to now. And then, as if he can revise history, turns around to blame the coalition government for the failure of sugar. This lesson is right before our very eyes. To see how these people lie, get their way, rape the economy, and then turn back to spin it around. What more do we need, doctor? What more do we need?
And that question is a pertinent question, a question that is posed to all of us. What more do we need to see? What more do we need to see? Normally, a government, you would see its true colors after 2 years, 3 years. We are not yet even a year since these people were installed, and we have seen more than their true colors. Those of us who didn't believe what we saw from 1992 to 2015, now we have it very clearly in front of us. And Amans, I'm very glad you made that statement. You will not be intimidated. For too long, they've been able to say to African Guyanese, you're a racist as soon as you open your mouth. And a lot of us, because we are sensitive, would pull back. And our supporters sometimes join the chorus. But I think more and more of us are now standing up and saying, no, we are not intimidated by that. We are not intimidated by that. In a column I wrote this weekend, in which they use one Rodney to intimidate people like myself, to say, you all betray Rodney. Well, I am saying that as a little boy, I joined Rodney. I stood with him. I sacrificed my liberty, sacrificed my education, my career, and you people out there who didn't want to touch Rodney, you should bow down and say thanks to people like me. I am not going to be intimidated. Further, nobody will tell me who my political friends and allies would be. I am standing back and pushing back. And you all out there, black people, and those who are not black, but supporters of freedom in Guyana, need to help us to stand up against these people. They want to silence your leaders because racists exist when there is nobody to call them out. So they call you a racist, you recoil, and then they carry out their racism without scrutiny. You all have to stand with your leaders. You don't have to agree with your leaders on everything that they do. You all know where I stand on that. But when your leaders are under attack because they want them to shut up, they want to shut up. So you all have to stand with them. Amanda, let's talk about what these people did to Pete Rowley. You know, the CARICOM leaders, to my mind, did Guyana a disservice during the elections. I understand that they were saving their own selves. They were playing politics. I understand all of that. But I think given where all of us came from, given our own common investment in the Caribbean civilization, I expected them to be more sensitive. Today we can say we told you so. You have opened a can of worms. The PPP doesn't care about Caribbean integration. I went back to the Federation to show that. When the PPP came to power in 1992, and then in 1997, 1995, Basdio Pandey came to power in Trinidad. They were talking about a parallel regional organization between Guyana, Trinidad, and Suriname. There's no interest in CARICOM. They never do. But they always think they can use our differences against us. Whether it's Rodney or whether it's the CARICOM leaders, they always think that they can use our ideological and other differences in order to manipulate their way in power. And in my mind, they use the CARICOM leaders. And now they're turning on the very CARICOM. Tell our audience about the significance of what they did on the Keith Rowley thing.
Well, I believe that it demonstrates to the entire CARICOM the level of respect that the PPPC regime believes that they should be accorded. It just says that very clearly. It demonstrates very, very clearly. And Doc, I suspect that we might get a write-up from our mutual friend after this program. But but look, this is a fact. And as hard as it seems for people to accept, this is what I say to people. I said, as I am a parent, I am a mother. I naturally feel for my own child. If I do not have that capacity, I am viewed as somebody who might be suffering from some kind of disorder, some kind of imbalance. I say that to say this. I am a Guyanese woman. I am an Afro-Guyanese woman by ethnicity. And if I am not capable of standing up for my own, then how can you trust me to stand up for somebody else? And this is I think it's a paradigm shift that we have to have, because we
Yeah.
like to see, we do not want to have the hard conversations. But if I cannot stand and speak when I see Afro-Guyanese being victimized, why should an Indo-Guyanese trust me to represent their interests?
Yes.
It's natural, it's human, it's normal. And so if I display to you a disregard for the welfare of people that look like me, you should not trust me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fundamental psychological thing, and I believe that. And so when they talk about you being racist and so on because you speak up against these injustices, I would speak just as loudly if an Indo-Guyanese brother or sister is being victimized, because it is wrong. It is wrong by whoever is doing it. It is wrong. It just so happens that what we have on our hands is that Afro-Guyanese are being victimized. And what the people do not understand, I think some people do not understand, Doc, is that to the extent that one ethnicity of Guyana is ethnically insecure, that is the extent to which the entire country is insecure. All ethnicities must understand that we have to create a space in Guyana where I am secure in my ethnicity. I am an Afro Guyanese. I am secure in that. My brother might be an Indo Guyanese. He is secure in that. He's secure in his heritage, his culture, all that he brings to the table. And this is the Guyana that we need to start forging. But let us not fool ourselves. We will be building on shaky foundations unless we confront this issue of race head on. And so this is why our mutual friend and his writings, his miasmic mutterings, as I call it, don't phase me.
Right.
It doesn't phase me, because I understand that if we get past this, we are an unstoppable nation. And that's what our young
And I
people
think
want.
that,
We
yes,
want a Guyana that grows with us. We want a Guyana where we don't have to leave here to experience the good life 50 something years after independence. So if it means we beating this race issue until it is dead and exhausted, and from the ashes of that we build a new Guyana, then so be it. Then so be it. But we will not be silenced.
yes, yes. And I think those words should resonate with all of us in this audience tonight. We did not invent race and ethnicity. Those are consequences of our history. Those are consequences of a history that we have overcome at a formal level and at a cultural level. And it's really a minor and perhaps a major disaster that we have beaten colonialism, we have beaten slavery. But the terrible consequences, the ethnic consequences, still follow us. You're right. Unless there is ethnic solution to our problems in Guyana, we are always going to be blighted economically. We're always going to be blighted culturally. We'll always be seen as the outsiders of a normal Caribbean or a normal world. And I think those words that you uttered there just now should really resonate with all of us here tonight. Running out of time. I think we have about 4 minutes left. Amansa, what are as foreign shadow foreign ministers, minister, what are some of the things that you're studying about you're thinking about. I mean, the parliament may not be a place where you will win victories in terms of votes, but it's an arena that we have to engage and contend with. And certainly questions, raising questions, asking for answers are very important. And I have to say that I must commend you young and new people for using the question period in Parliament to really keep this government on its toes. What are some of the questions you have asked them in the recent past, and perhaps you have on the order paper?
Well, there are a couple of things that I am interested in addressing. Up to now, I have not been able to receive a proper response from the administration on this no vote at the UN. And so that is something
Mhm.
that we're pursuing. This issue of CARICOM is something that we will definitely be pursuing. And Dr. Hines, I'm glad that you touched on it because, sometimes as representatives of the people, we can get discouraged because you hear, don't go to parliament, it's a waste of time. But I think what the last week and a half has shown us is that parliament is an important forum. It is an important ground on which to fight. And questions that hold the government accountable are important. I am of the firm view that this is why the government did not hold parliament for in excess of 90 days, because they
Yes.
understand the power of being able to question them in parliament and having these answers entered into the Hansard. The Hansard is a document with legal weight. And it comes back to the point you were making in the opening about our population being more informed. And as we move forward and as we build Guyana, we are going to have to make decisions based on information more than emotions. And so it
Yes.
is important. It is important that we understand the use of parliament. We would not have discovered all of this shadiness with the Sputnik vaccine had we not been able to ask those questions in the National Assembly. We would not have discovered that this regional task force unconstitutional as it is, that they have spent money to set up this task. So mind you, these are monies that have already been spent.
Been spent, yes.
And this is exactly why they do not want the likes of David Patterson as the chair of the PAC. But I think that they have observed that even if they don't get David Patterson as the chair, that this cadre, this cohort of MPs will keep them on their toes in whatever arena. And so Parliament continues to be important. It is one strategy in a multi-pronged approach to confronting dictatorship. And so it is
Thank you
not to
very
be
much.
taken lightly.
Thank you very much. And before you go, you were live before you came on the show, and you were dealing with a pertinent issue. I myself have not wasn't able to listen to your program because I was engaged in another issue. But you were dealing with some recent developments. Tell our audience about it, if you may.
Yeah, sure. For a couple of minutes, I
Yeah.
was concerned about some developments that I was observing with the GPSU Credit Union. And I am of the firm opinion that this attack against Mr. Trevor Ben has more, there's more in the martyr, as we say. I think the PPP is concerned, being the anti-working class party that they have become. They are concerned that there is a viable financial institution that can service public servants and that provides a viable option outside of the traditional commercial banks through which public servants may be able to achieve those things through that they always dream of. And I believe that it is a part of the psychological warfare and the economic warfare that the PPPC is unleashing against public servants. I made the point earlier today that you have had two budgets and not one increase for public servants. Yet, public servants have a legal representative in the form of the unions, and you have heard nary a word from them on this matter. They are the people with the ability to represent workers, with the legal, constitutional, all of the rights and obligations to represent workers, and they are silent. My other concern is not only are they silent, but there are some people, in particularly the GPSU, who seem content to be used as pawns to affect the positive progress being made by the GPSU credit union, and it must not be allowed to happen. And the only people that can stand up to make that not happen are the public servants, particularly those in the GPSU. They form the lion's share of the membership of this credit union. A credit union that is now offering mortgages, now offering car loans, that has revolutionized that credit union space in the short time that they have taken control of it. And you have puppets in the management of the GPSU who are willing to be used to undermine the progress and to undermine the advancement of public servants. Everybody dreams of owning their own home, of owning their own car. It is a natural human dream. Everybody wants a better life. And a viable financial institution for public servants is just emerging. And the PPPC is hell bent on destroying it. And public servants are quiet and they are not demanding more from their leadership. That's about it in a capsule now.
Okay, thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you very much for coming on tonight and, as usual, enriching our experience in Politics 101. Rickford had to leave us, but thanks to Rickford. And I hope some of these issues, as they develop, that of course you will answer our call as you usually do at short notice, to come on and share and to bond with our brothers and sisters. Thank you so much, Amanda.
And
So
I might
there
add
you
to
have
give
it.
our mutual friend writing material for a week or so.
Right,
So
right, yes.
we'll see. Thank you for having me,
We,
Doc. Always a pleasure.
thank you very much, Amanda. And thank you all for staying with us. And, as someone who has dedicated my life to struggle, it makes me feel so proud. I'm getting on in age, but it makes me so proud when I see um, our younger activists coming through and giving a good account of themselves and standing up for us and leading from the front. You feel very proud, and I do. When I listen to the Amanda Waltons and the Rickford Burks of this world, who have taken the baton and they're moving on. Thank you all for staying with us. The comments, I've not had a chance to read a lot of them, but I know that you all have been picking up a storm there. I see my friend Rennie Paris from Buxton in the audience. Welcome, Rennie, to Politics 101, referring to Amanda Walton this year as Professor Amanda Walton this year. And sure, and that is quite an apt description. As you know, we are now broadcasting. We have been broadcasting for the last month and a half on Channel 9. So these programs are on Channel 9. They're on Saturday, on Sunday, on Tuesday, and Thursday. I think there is a rebroadcast tonight of probably a program on Tuesday. If you want to support and to help us stay online, keep the program online here, and to keep it on Channel 9 so that those who are not on Facebook are able to have access to the program, you can contribute. I think the medium or the media for contributing, it's on there. Some of you have been contributing, and I thank you all very much for helping us to keep the program. And those of you who desire to do so, you can support us as members of the larger family, and as we continue to do this kind of work. It's coming up on the weekend, so have yourselves a very productive weekend, and I'll see you all again for another edition of Politics 101 next Tuesday. Thank you very much.